of opportunity. How can we make use of this time to further our understanding and practice of the Buddha's teachings? This talk will explore the Buddha's medicine of wisdom and how it is an ultimate solution to our problems and worries. So without further ado, let's welcome Venerable Chang-Ming.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Terence, for the introduction. I understand that this is a public talk, but ultimately, right, it is still a semi-religious talk. So for those who are Buddhists, I will invite you to place your palms together, and then we will do the invocation to the Buddha. You do not have to unmute your mics for this, but you can just repeat after me. Homage to the Buddha, the Noble One, the fully enlightened one. Homage to the Buddha, the enlightened one, the Noble One, the fully enlightened one. The Dharma that is unsurpassed by all, and that I have not heard in thousands and billions of eons. Today is the day where with one mind I uphold the Dhamma so that I may understand the fully enlightened one's teaching. Okay. Once again, good evening to everybody. This is a talk that has been a public talk that has been organized by the Mahaprajna Buddhist Society in conjunction with Chinese New Year, because my master, Venerable Ho Zong, is currently giving the teachings in Chinese, and so I thought this was that the Chinese New Year was a good opportunity to pick up, to complement his teachings by giving English one of my own. And of course, as you can see, the topic is very relevant to, in fact, it's a bit too relevant to us today because of, the unrest that's surrounding us all in this time. And so I wanted to talk about, to go through with you, for those who are new to Buddhism, and for those who are already practitioners and students of the Dharma, to go through some of the very basic things in Dharma, right, that can help to anchor us in this time. I think we must remember that in very difficult times, where the economy is bad, there is political unrest everywhere, and there is disease, what people need, right, is not very profound Dharma. No, they don't need very, very cheap kind of things. What they need is the simple things. But the thing about the simple things, right, is that they are very easy to understand but very hard to do. And so hopefully, right, through this two-part talk, right, where I talk to you, when I bring you slowly, right, through some of the basic principles of what Buddhist teaching is all about, right, that my hope for you is that you will be able to apply this at a time, right, where Dharma has become more important than ever. And that's why I thought of this topic today. Yeah, medicine. So there's this old Asian belief, right, that if you are sick, right, don't go and see the doctor. Just drink hot water. maybe some of the kids here and the parents will know what I'm talking about, right? Because to Asians, especially Chinese, right, there's a deep distrust in Western medicine, and sometimes for very good reason, because there's this belief that Western medicine, right, has a lot is artificial, and therefore, right, it has a lot of side effects, right? Not there has a lot of side effects. Things like, you know, I don't know, steroid, like steroid creams, like hormonal treatment, like even if you think about it, right, treatment for cancer, right, is often seen as a very taboo thing in especially in Asian cultures, because they believe, oh, you know, the body is supposed to be natural, right? It's supposed to heal itself. But when it comes to when it comes to very serious situations, right, then when that becomes a possibility, right, that natural means will not resolve itself, right, then suddenly people start to panic. Then they will start to take whatever, but then by the time it's too late. I am no doctor and I am no pharmacist. Okay, what I am doing is just from social point of view, right? I am questioning this idea, right, that we need to be very sick in order to very, very sick, right, in order to accept treatment, you know. And even even now, right, there's also fear of and even now there's also a fear of the unknown, like, because you don't really know much about the medicine, do you? And that's why there's so much fear. If you knew something about it, like a proper pharmacist or a proper doctor, you go to him and you ask for his professional opinion today. He tells you, okay, this is the medicine, this is what may happen if you take the medicine, this is what happens if you go for the operation, blah blah blah, what's your percentage, and things like that. They're supposed to do that. It's part of their professional responsibility. But to the normal person, right, these things don't immediately come to mind. They only have to. And this is the same for Dharma. If you think about it, it's the same for Buddhism. People must, you know, encounter some very bad crisis in their lives. Especially when I'm talking from personal opinion, there are a lot of, I have met a lot of friends, and I have some relatives, right, who, you know, they don't want to, they have this aversion, you know, they have this resistance, right, towards taking medicine, because even if they are, you know, even if they are a little bit sick, because我是好好的啊，我是很快就会痊愈, you know, I will recover very quickly, and then there will be, and then sometimes, right, they wait, and then if all goes well, everything is fine, they recover fine. Okay, then sometimes it gets worse, right, and gets worse until you have to go to the doctor, and then you have to stay in bed for 1 week because you need to take antibiotics, and the antibiotics just knock you out. And so what I am suggesting today, right, from this two-part talk, right, let me put the conclusion in front first, right, is that we need to be very, very aware that that we are facing problems. No matter how subtle they are problems. And it's just a matter of using, right, the correct mindset, right, to treat every problem in a systematic, in a progressive, and in a logical manner. And that is what Buddhism is all about. It's progressive, it's systematic, and it's you know, and it's curable. Okay, and I think we need to believe in that. So I hope that this is something that you will get out of the talk today, of this talk over these past over these next 2 weeks. Okay, so we'll go through an overview. I just wanted to show you what I will be going through these 2 weeks. And of course, because this is a public talk, I am trying not to inundate, I'm trying not to flood everybody with a lot of very technical details about the kind of references that I am using and things like that, because I feel that that may be not so helpful for the people who are, you know, just coming here to have a brief introduction of what my talk is. So if you really want the references, you can approach me. I'm on Facebook. I'm also on Instagram and things like that. And if you need, right, use the chat. Put your email down. I will send you the materials. Okay. So for the overview, right, today what I'll be going through is the preface. We'll be talking about what kind of a simple kind of overview of what is medicine in Buddhism generally. Okay, and what is the Buddhist opinion on what's the Buddhist definition of medicine? The second is identifying the illness and cure, and this one is going to be the meat of the teaching. This is going to be quite important, so I hope you guys pay attention here. The third is which we will go through the next week, right? Is we'll be talking about how to create an environment that is conducive to your recovery, and by that, right, I mean practice in the Dharma. How can you apply the teachings? How can you make it such that it is easier for you to apply the teachings? And then, of course, conclusion. Okay, so let's talk about the preface. Okay, so in common worldly knowledge, right? In common worldly knowledge, we have I've identified 4 kinds of basic medicines that people usually take in order to relieve their illnesses. Okay, and I think the most common, right, is this. It's called anesthetic. Now, what is anesthetic? Anesthetic is called painkiller. In a general term. Now, this painkiller, right, is something that people with somebody with very acute, with very acute conditions, right? People who meet with very acute conditions take in order to relieve themselves of very severe and immediate kind of pain. Okay, and so for example, you have migraines, right? Some people have migraines. Some people, because they have muscle pain, or maybe they broke a bone or things like that, and then they need to take morphine. These are anesthetics. Now, anesthetics, right? Anesthetics in common knowledge are very, very temporary. They provide relief, but only at the surface. So, for example, right, if you didn't take that painkiller today, right, probably the symptom will come back, the situation will come back, and so we have symptomatic treatment. When something arises, we have to deal with it quickly and efficiently. So that's painkiller, right? The second one is analgesic. Now, analgesic is also painkiller. It's also in a sense painkiller, but this painkiller is a little more long-lasting. Now, what it does, right? It attempts in various ways, right? It attempts in various ways to make sure that the symptoms do not recur. So in a sense, right, it's also trying to be, so it's trying to be asymptomatic. But in that sense, right, it is going through what we call, superficial means of controlling our condition. So so for example, right, just now as I mentioned, right, we got steroids, right? We have anti-inflammants. Okay. Just a small reminder here, right? If you cannot, please mute your mic during this talk, because there may be feedback, and I'm also using a condenser recorder here, so it can be quite distracting. Thank you. Okay, and so we have anti-inflammants. They move through specific pathways. They work through specific pathways in order to resolve the symptoms. So that's analgesic for you. Okay. Panacea. Now panacea is what we call the cure lah. But this cure, right, is permanent. But this cure is permanent. It will make sure that the symptoms don't recur again. So for example, right, if let's say, right, if let's say your migraine is from stress, today, right, if I constantly put you in a state of non-stress, right, this is in fact a panacea. And I stress the word, and I put you in a state of permanent non-stress. That means I permanently remove the cause of the stress. So that is a permanent cure. Now, the last one is a placebo. Now, what do I mean by a placebo, right? Now, this placebo is a bit special from the four that from the three that I listed above. The medicine has actually no use, or what we say, no seeming use. But perhaps, right, because of this placebo, right, perhaps because of this placebo, right, you are cured. But why? Perhaps this one, right, this one has something that has a very great deal to do with the core of Buddhist teaching. Because as we know, right, Buddhism is about the mind. It's about the training of the mind. Now, anything that we feel, right, that we perceive in this world, right, has to do with the mind. Has something to do with the mind. It does not come from the mind. I am not trying to say that. I'm not trying to say that this disease, right, that the mind is a direct cause of, any disease or any cure or even enlightenment. For those practitioners, right, I hope that you know what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the world is the mind and the mind only. I think that's a very simplistic way of, in my personal opinion, right, that will be a very simplistic teaching. But what I'm trying to say that a lot of our problems that are caused today, right, come from our mind. And the fact is that if they come from our mind, right, our body, right, our body is actually not in any form of, is not in any form of, it's not naturally in any state of suffering. And because it's not in any natural state of suffering, right? Actually, a lot of the pain that we experience, right? A lot of the suffering that we experience, right? Could be removed, right? By how we perceive it, by how we perceive this pain, how we perceive this suffering. And so, right, we think that we are in pain. So we take the medicine and we are cured. But actually, the medicine, right, had no function at all. The medicine, right, only had the function of removing the illusion of pain. This may sound a bit profound, so I'll give you a bit of time to think about that. The placebo, right, is a medicine that has no seeming use. But when you take that placebo, you feel cured because it takes away the illusion of pain. And so this will be something that we'll be talking more next week about when we talk about the practice of wisdom in particular. And so from my personal experience, right, what I have done is that I have in general, right, mapped these 4 kinds of medicines, right, to the 4 kinds of medicines, right, that are stated in the Buddha's teachings. Because eventually, right, this is not a medical talk. This is a Buddhist talk. And what I'm trying to do is that for beginners in Buddhism, right, what I'm trying to do is that I want to map observations, right, from real life to ourselves when we start to practice the Dharma, so that we can start to see, right, how closely knit, right, Buddhist teachings are to this world. Okay, the way we deal with problems, right, in the worldly sense, right, are also dealt with the same way in Buddhism. And so in Buddhist teachings, right, we have 4 kinds of medicines, okay, or in the terminological sense, right, we have truthful teachings. Now, why are they true? Now, because Buddhism, right, is an oral tradition, we cannot make everybody become enlightened, right, just by tapping their head and saying be enlightened. No, this doesn't work. So right, our form of medicine, right, is transmitted through the teachings, and there are 4 kinds. Okay, one is the worldly kinds of teachings. Now, the worldly kinds of teachings, right, are the definition of this teaching, right, is what we call 吉祥乐意. So basically, right, in a nutshell, right, it's trying to make people happy. It is a teaching of auspiciousness. Now, what is auspiciousness in the Buddhist sense? Auspiciousness, right, is to what? Most of what we say to ward off evil, correct or not? To ward off evil. So in the sense, right, it's like how we put on the mask, right? The mask is now a sort of symbol, right, for warding off evil. And so, right, this is the kind of worldly teachings, right, that is the most prevalent in our world today. We want to make people not happy, right? Like in the very crude sense, right? We say people 不爽啊, 不爽, right? So we need to make people happy first before they are willing to listen to anything else. And so this And so this was something that was employed by the Buddha, right, in various ways in the scriptures, right, in order, right, to allow people to gain faith in Buddhism. Because their minds, right, are soft. Because you, when you teach people to be happy, right, and they are in a sense happy, right, then they will become very soft. They will become very open and receptive to the Buddhist teachings. And so this is how we, and so this is a kind of early conversion of what, of the Buddha, or of Buddhism. How we converted people. We allowed them to gain faith by making them happy. We taught them the way to ward off evil and what? And gain fortune. So today, so this time, right, you know, like for example, you hear a lot of people talking about, people talking about how the year of the rat, right, is the plague rat, right? You know, the rat is commonly associated with what? The bubonic plague, you know, something that killed off 1/3 of people in Europe, you know, in the 16th century. That's something that is, you know, way, you know, the kind of unlucky vibes, you see. So if I wanted to say I make you happy, right, then I say, you know, now we're moving into the year of the bull, right? And so what? It's very bullish, right? So happy new year, right? You know, everybody's going to get better and things like that. Things that don't, maybe, perhaps, right, they don't carry much substance. They do have that kind of effect. They not necessarily have that substance, you know, but it achieves what it set out to do, and that is to allow people to gain faith and happiness. Now, the second one, right, is what we call the particular teachings. Now, the particular teachings, right, are for humans, lah. Basically, what it means is that these teachings, right, are directed towards humans. Now, what does it mean to be a human? Now, what does it mean to be a human, right? To be a human means that you have three things, right, that are very, very prominent in your psyche. Three things that are very prominent in your psyche. One is the idea of memory. Humans are very good at remembering. And of course, I mean, like, you may think of elephants and whatsoever, right? But humans can remember much more than the average animal. And of course, if you believe in the six realms, right? If you believe in reincarnation, right? They can remember past lives. They can see. Some of them have this ability. And so this idea of memory is something that is crucial, right, to our long-term happiness. It's something that allows us, right, to learn from the past and bring it forward into the future. So this is memory. The second one is pure conduct. Humans, right, have the ability to control what? The humans have the ability to control their desires. This is something that animals cannot do. This is something that the heavens, the people in the heavenly realm, right, cannot do, because they are immersed in desire. Some of them are immersed in what? Some of them are immersed in attachment. You know, some of them are immersed in anger, and so what makes humans outstanding among these different types of people is that we are capable of pure conduct. That's what's precious about the human life. Now, the third one, right, is diligence. If you want pure conduct, right, you have to be diligent. You cannot afford to slack off. And so these three things, right, are actually and so these three things are actually an elevation of what? An elevation of the three aspects of the human psyche. Memory has to do with the mental capability of a human. Pure conduct, right, has something to do with the emotional capability of the human. Diligence, right, has something to do with what? The spiritual aspect of the human. Now, when I mean spiritual, right, it means that it's talking about willpower lah. It is basically talking about drive. What keeps you going? And so this is, and of course, this is different from emotional capability of the human, because emotions, they are fluctuating. You see, they're fluctuating. They are talking about the good or bad state of, you know, a person's inner psyche. Now, this is the IQ part, right? This is the EQ part. Now, this spiritual capability, right, ties the mental capability and the emotional capability of the human together. It is a unifying factor. So this is something that you need to think about. Now, when we say that humans have these three aspects, right, of that are far superior to other sentient beings, right? What do we want to? What do this group of teachings, right, the particular teachings have to do, right? They want to what? Fulfill certain aims, certain goals. They fulfill certain goals of the practitioner. And the only way to fulfill certain goals of the practitioners, right, is, in short, right, avoiding evil, doing good. Now, this is different from the first part, because when they say to ward off evil and gain faith in Buddhism, right, a lot of times this is very passive. They just need to follow what is being done. But here, the particular teachings, right, there needs to be an active part of the practitioner, right? The practitioner needs to play an active role, right, in really trying to set down, right, to set down the objectives, right, that will make this happiness realizable. Okay, that make this happiness, right, achievable. So as you can see, that there's a systematic, there's a progressive aspect to this. Okay, and often, right, this avoiding doing good, right, it's not something that is exclusive to Buddhists. If you see 1 and 2, right, they are not exclusive to Buddhists. Other religions teach them as well. Have these teachings as well. This is not something that is exclusive to us. This is something that we must keep in mind, especially when we go on to the next part. Now, 3 and 4 is something that is only restricted to Buddhists, or at least in Buddhist teachings, it's like that. Okay, the first is counteractive teachings. Now, what is the counteractive teachings, right? Is that the aim of it, right, is to what? To destroy hesitation. Now, when I say destroy hesitation, right, what does it mean, right? It actually means, right, to destroy is to destroy things that are blocking you from transcending this suffering, from going beyond. And by this, right, I mean liberation. So what we are actually destroying, right, is obstacles, afflictions. You can have a lot of names for this. But what it means is that we are striving towards liberation. Some of you know this as nirvana. And so this is what we, and so you see the first two, right, anesthetic, analgesic, right? You can see the difference in the two here. And then as a panacea, a permanent cure, right? We practice the counteractive teachings. We destroy afflictions. So these are the teachings, right, that will guarantee you, right, permanent release from your problems. And this is not something that can be found in the world. Let me emphasize. This is not something that, in fact, right, it is something that is going against the very nature of the world itself. For example, the world tells you, that, oh, everything here is happy, is permanent, it's pure in the sense that it is beautiful, you see. And Buddhism tells you, no, the world is not as it seems. The world may seem permanent, but it is not. The world may seem beautiful, but it is not, you see. The world may seem that it is, it's all about me, but Buddhism says, no, it is not about me. And so that this is something what we talk about counteractive teachings. Something that goes against the grain of what we believe. Some of the very deep-seated, ingrained views of this world. So these are the counteractive teachings. And the ultimate teachings. Now the ultimate teachings, right, are something that is beyond this world, that goes even one step further. Now, these are teachings, right, that reveal the ultimate truth. And this ultimate truth, right, is a key to is another word for direct realization. These teachings are talking about, are trying to describe, right? Are trying to describe a state of ultimate realization. And for this reason, right, it is something that is beyond all words, beyond expressions. But in the Buddha's teachings, in the scriptures, in the commentaries, right, that come out from the scriptures, these ultimate teachings have to the best of their ability, right, they try to express this ultimate truth. They try to express this state. Okay, and so right, because they are beyond expression, right, that's why they are the placebo. And this will have something to do with, the idea that, are we truly, is this sickness real? You know, or are we just bluffing ourselves? And so how do we break out of this? And how do we break out of this spell? And so we have 4 kinds of medicine that we want to talk about, that we want to address and make use of, you know, in the course of this short teaching that we have. So I will just invite everybody to think about this very clearly. Okay, 2 A's, 1 P. Okay, 2 A's, 1 P. Sorry, 2 A's, 2 P. Okay, 2A to P. Anesthetic, analgesic, panacea, placebo. When you map it down, right, you'll get the worldly teachings, what we call 世间习谈，就是世间的善法，令人吉祥悦意。The particular teachings, 各个为人希谈哦。The teachings, right, that allow people, right, to 止恶行善，它止恶行善。The counteractive teachings, the 对治希谈呢，它是破斥忧郁啊。So that means, right, they destroy the afflictions that keep us, you know, in samsara. They keep us in birth, in death. So these are the counteractive teachings. And the ultimate teachings is 第一义希谈。第一义希谈, right, is the ultimate teachings, the things that are the truth and the truth alone. Something that is beyond all expression. Okay? And so this will be something to keep in mind. Okay. Now, in the Buddha's teachings, illness and cure. So we need to talk about disease, right? Now, this disease, right? A lot of us, we are able to see our physical ailments very easily. Now, why do we have the ability to see our physical ailments much more easily than our mental ailments? I think I'm not very sure about this. Perhaps you all may want to express your views on this. I keep this open to discussion in the chat and of course elsewhere. But I think it has the idea to do with what we call acute pain. What we do with acute pain. Now, when I say acute pain, right, it means that, right, it probably interferes with your basic needs. For people who are familiar with the psychological term, right, it's called the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Okay, so people need what? They need food, they need water, they need a basic sense of safety. They need a basic sense of safety. And that is what. And if these basic needs, right, if these basic needs are compromised, they become very physical ailments. They become physical ailments. Now, why do people now if people are very in a lot of mental and physical stress, you can think about this. If a lot of people are mental stress, right, then you say, oh, you know, the mental ailment is very easily recognizable, right? That's because, right, it's usually tied to a physical ailment. There will be a physical sensation that is tied to a mental state. The Buddha talked about 404 sicknesses, 404病. Now, this 404病, right, is not very clearly defined it's not very clearly defined in the scriptures, but it is a general term for physical ailments. And these physical ailments, right, come from a so-called imbalance in the 4 elements. Now, what do we mean by the 4 elements here? It does not mean, it is not elements in the chemical sense. The elements means aspects. Okay, you may want to understand them as aspects of the body. Now, for example, right, if it's earth related, right, that would be connected to the substance of our body. The substance of our body will be what? Our bones, our skin, you know, our teeth, anything that is physically manifest and has a weight, anything that can take up space, matter, anything that can take up space, right, that will be earth related. Now, if you are talking about water, then water is movement. Then water is movement. That is what? Those are things that can move within us, right? There will be blood. There will be fluids. Oh, there will be fluids in our body. You know, even our eyes, right? When our glands, right? Those are part of the movement element. Now, fire, right? Fire is in a very easy sense, right? Warmth, temperature. If you're too hot, you have fever. If you're too cold, you have hypothermia. So that is fire. And wind, sorry, wait, this movement, right? Let me correct myself here. This is not movement. This is what we call this so-called wetness. Anything that is liquefiable and can help to and so-called help to give us life. Okay, so there's wetness. Now there's movement, right? Movement will be wind. Okay, now this wetness here, right? Now this wetness here, right, is what keeps us together. It's what keeps us together. Thanks for pointing that out. This is what we would term as a better word for it will be cohesion. They exist in our joints. They exist. Fluid exists in our glands. They help to lubricate and keep everything together. So this is water. Now movement will be wind. Wind is our breath. Okay, wind is our breath. So these 4 things. And when there's an imbalance, right, we will have 404 types of sicknesses. Okay, are all stemming from various kinds of upsets. Okay. Now, these physical ailments, right, come from in Buddhist teaching, right, come from our mental ailments. These are the gross, the physical ailments, right, are merely a gross manifestation of what we see or what we have here, mental ailments. And our mental ailments, right, are in short, right, greed, hatred, and delusion. Now, this greed, hatred, and delusion, right, maybe people will ask, hey, then how does greed, hatred, and delusion, right, directly result in physical ailments? Oh, they give rise to what? They give rise to other kinds of afflictions, mental afflictions. And these mental afflictions, right, create what we call karma, or what we call action, right? Which results what? Which results in us having to what? Having to deal with this physical body, with this physical form. It could be human today, it could be animal tomorrow, it could be hungry ghost tomorrow, but it could be heavenly being day after. But all these, right, is what gives us what? Gives us a body and mind. And this body and mind, right, is one that is deeply connected to suffering. And so we have this, threefold, and we have this threefold link. Okay, we have this threefold link of a cause and effect here. We call this what? We call this 祸业苦, which is number one, ignorance. Number two, action, or what we call karma. And number three is what? Suffering. If you don't remember, for those people who practice Buddhism, right, who study Buddhism, remember the 12 dependent origination, right? The 12 dependent origination is a full explanation of the human condition. It's a full explanation of sentient beings conditions. But right, it can all be boiled down to these three parts: ignorance, action, and suffering. 祸业苦. Okay. Now this 祸业苦, right, is what ties us, right, to birth and death. It's actually what ties us to birth and death. It explains, it is in Buddhism, right, it explains why we are suffering so much. And how, and in order to resolve this, right, we have to undo it. We have to undo it from what? This. We have to undo it from our ignorance. So this is what we call reverse engineering. This reverse engineering will be the key to our liberation. Okay. And so here, right, when we talk about recognizing illness, we must look at mental illness and we must look at physical illness. The way we perceive the relationship between these two. And a lot of us don't have. And a lot of us, right, I can tell you, including, no matter how long you have studied Buddhism for, or whether you are a beginner, right? If you only study Buddhism as a knowledge, as a set of instructions, and you see it as a kind of if you only see it as a kind of information, then whatever we do, right, will only be limited to the Buddhist worldly teachings and the Buddhist particular teachings. It's just that they happen to be Buddhist. So taking Christianity or Islam or Hinduism or insert religion of your choice, right? If you only take part of, if you only treat your so-called religion, right, as a form of information, right, then I can tell you that that is not what makes you a practitioner of that religion, because you must remember that the worldly teachings and the particular teachings, right, are common to all religions. A lot of people, right, are actually non-Buddhist even though they don't know it. And they don't know, because you must get to the root of the matter. And that's what I mean by, you know, taking medicine in the anesthetic way, in taking it the analgesic way, which are trying to solve certain problems. That's okay. And that's very good. It has its particular function. But as far as this function goes, right, it cannot take you beyond. It cannot take you beyond. There must be something that differentiates, in the Buddhist context, right, there must be something that differentiates Buddhism from other religions. And that is and to the Buddhists here, right, it is the offering of a permanent cure. Which is what I mean by destroying hesitation. Buddhists, right, who practice the worldly teachings, who practice the particular teachings, right, but they do not practice the counteractive teachings, right, will not be able to solve their problems. They will at a root level. And this is what I mean by recognizing illness. Illness and cure, right, are two sides of the same coin. And we need to know that there is something wrong, right? And as a Buddhist, right, we need to know that there's something wrong with our existence. It cannot be, oh, I think maybe that, you know, existence is meaningful, maybe, you know. If you still have that maybe, right, then I tell you that disease, right, that disease will always be there. And so this is what and of course, right, I hope that if you don't understand anything from this talk today, right, you need to understand this. The Buddhist teaching, right, is not something that is particularly palatable it's not particularly palatable. But why is it so? It's because, right, it goes against, right, a lot, as I said earlier, a lot of deep-seated beliefs that we have about this world. You know, people will think, oh, you know, how am I suffering? 我还是好好的啊，我身体健康啊，我有家人啊， I got a family, I'm living a successful career. But can I ask you, is it always like that? If that was the case, right, then why are we suffering? Why do we still have sickness? Why do we still have, you know, things like, why are there cases of depression? Why are they, you know, why are there mental illnesses, right, that don't go away? No matter how much you want to try and suppress them, or to find ways to, you know, to mitigate them, but they're still around. They don't move. They don't go away, and that's what we want to, see. This is what we call the noble truth of suffering. And the noble truth of the cause of suffering. People talk about, you know, avoiding COVID, like avoiding the plague. But but the truth of the matter is that, right, you can avoid the plague all you want. That's fine. But you won't be able to avoid your own mind. Especially, right, the fear and insecurity that comes from having to deal with a so-called real external threat. In some ways, right, we say that the possibility of a pandemic is life-changing, right? Is fundamental, right? But have you thought of why? But perhaps I may want to suggest this to you, I may want to suggest this to you. I want you to think about why is it so fundamental? Why is it so? Why do people think that it's very fundamental? Because it is something that exposes our what? That exposes our deepest insecurities. And because it exposes our deepest insecurities, right? We have to come up with long-lasting ways to deal with this insecurity, with this deepest insecurity. In this case, right, it is fear lah. It's fear of death lah. It's fear of what? It's fear of permanent illness. It's fear of what? An upset what? An upset of what we think of what we think of as the natural world order, right? It will be, 天下太平啊, 国泰民安啊, things like that. But if you don't see this, but if you don't see the truth of suffering, right? If you don't see the noble truth of cause of suffering, right? Whether we are in nice times or whether we are in horrible times, this truth still pervades. And even if we go back to our normal lives in the future, right? I hope that this and something like this, a big event like this, right, will be enough to let you know, to let everyone know, right? As even myself, as a learner, it is a lesson, right, that we should not be taking this, we should not be seeing the world, taking the world as it is for granted. We think of the world, right, as a very nice place. We think of the world as a very, a good place. You see, some people believe in the inherent goodness of people, and by all means, right, that is not wrong. There is happiness in this world. There is relative joy in this world. There is relative goodness of people's hearts. You cannot deny that. But what at the same time, right, you also need to recognize that there is something that is fundamentally dissatisfactory about our existence. This dissatisfaction, right, will always be around. Whether it is something that we cannot get, or whether it is something that, or whether we meet people we don't like, or whether we leave people we like, whether it's birth, aging, sickness, and death, especially the last three, the aging, sickness, and death, right? These should all be stark reminders of the frailty of existence. Okay. Sometimes in Buddhism we call them the messengers. They are the messengers that tell you that, hey, you need to start to wake up. So that's the disease. And so what about cure? Now, for the cure, right? We have so-called the mundane cure, right? Now, the mundane cure, right, what we talk about is what we term as the worldly cure. Now, the worldly cure here, right, is not what we talk about as in terms of taking medicine or getting injection or whatever. That's not what it means. The worldly cure, right, helps us to deal with the reality of the world as it is right here, right now. And this needs to come from our mind. And this needs to come from our mind. Because, right, as I've mentioned before, Buddhism is about getting the right view of this world. And so we need to have a proper perception and understanding of this world before we can continue further. And of course, we talk about right view in terms of what? In terms of looking at what? Good and evil. The basic ability, right, to differentiate what is wholesome from what and what is unwholesome. And because there is good and evil, right, there must be this thing that is the cause, that is the core of Buddhist teaching, which is cause and effect. Because if there were no such thing as good and evil, right, then I could tell you evil will have the same effect as good, right? Then there's no such thing as 因缘啊. There's no such thing as karma. Why would there be cause and effect? And when there is cause and effect, right, there must be the past and present. Now the past and present, right, extends beyond the past, present, and future. Because because they are all relative to one another. If you have something in the past, then by relation there must be a present, and further extrapolating, you must have the future. And that is where you see cause and effect in itself. We must know that everything happens for a reason. Even if we cannot see that, even if the reason is not made manifest to us at the outset. There must be a very firm conviction in cause and effect. We cannot say that, hey, somebody look like, look like 大坏人, very, very evil person, right? But how come he got good results? And then we start to doubt cause and effect. That is not right view. Right view is that he did something in his past. Right, that allowed him to obtain the good result that he's enjoying now. But his present bad actions, right, will be something that will affect him adversely in the future. This is how we Buddhists, right, should see cause and effect. Cause and effect, right, is not using our eyes, not using our physical eyes. It's using the eye of wisdom. 我们要用慧眼去看. So that's why we say we talk about the mind. We don't talk about the eyes, right? When we talk about the mind, right? Sometimes we talk about right view, right? Sometimes we talk about this term called 正见. Now, when we say 见, right? Sometimes we say to see, correct or not? To see, But actually, this seeing, right, comes from where? It comes from our perception. It comes from our view. And so, right, we don't see with our eyes, but see with our mind. So don't be fooled. So don't be fooled. The importance of right view, right, cannot be underestimated. Oh. And because we have past and present and future, right, there is what? The unenlightened and the enlightened. Now the unenlightened and the enlightened, right? Because we understand good and evil, cause and effect, past and present, right? Then we must also accept that we have the possibility of being a better form of ourselves than we were previously. And that means right, that we have the ability, right, to be able to what? To dissolve ignorance and to end suffering, because we understood the truth. So that is the last one. Okay, so now I'm left with 20 minutes for Q&A. Okay, so I have certain parts of this talk that I have not covered as of yet. But as it is now, right, as a beginner's talk, right, what I have covered is actually quite a lot. So I'll quickly talk about the body before I wrap up. Now, if we say that we are supposed to cultivate the mind, right, in order to deal with the problems that we face in this world, right, then we must back it up with some realistic action, some action plan, right? And so the Buddha taught a moral code. He taught a moral code for us to follow, which is what? Precepts. Now, precepts, right, in layman terms, right, it means rules. It means rules, but it can also be interpreted as a form of training. A training of the body, a training of the body and speech. Now, the training of the body and speech, right? We need to know what kind of actions, right, lead us to suffering. What kind of actions lead us to suffering, and what actions lead us to happiness? So we have the training on the body and speech. And so the Buddha, he taught about some very simple rules. The 5 precepts: do not kill, do not steal, do not engage in sexual misconduct, do not drink, intoxicants, because they affect your ability to to maintain this right view, to maintain this sobriety of the mind, and of course do not lie, because that's also part of speech, right? You see, so that's all that there is, for a very basic level. But of course when we look at this, right, and we want to expand the scope of this training of the body and speech, right, then we will be talking about avoiding evil and doing good. So that means it's not just about what is prescribed. It's not about prescription anymore. It's about proactiveness. You need to be very proactive, right, in trying to achieve this happiness for yourself. So that will be about the training and body and speech, right? Precepts. Now, as for the mind, right, we have something that is called meditation, which a lot of people are very interested in when it comes to Buddhism. Or no, how can it help you with understanding the world? How can it help you to deal with your negative emotions? How can it deal with your afflictions? Now, because this is a very big part of Buddhist practice, and it should not be explained lightly. I'll leave it to next week, but it is sufficient to know for now, right, that precepts, right, as long as you don't have that stillness, as long as you don't have that meditation, right, it's very hard to resist temptation. It's very, very hard to resist temptation. Now, what do we mean by temptation, right? It's not as simple as curbing your urge to spend. It's not as simple as curbing your urge to spend in very reckless ways. Okay, although that may be part of some of the obstacles that you face, or it's not about eating one less French fry. It's about making sure that you are able to resist the temptation to eat that extra French fry again and again and again. And I hope that you understand what I mean by this. Any person, right, with right view, as long as he does not train the mind to be resilient enough, that right view will falter, because there is nothing to anchor it. There's nothing concrete to anchor it. Right view is still a what? It's still a concept, but it needs to be internalized. And this internalization, right, is something that we have to establish through precepts and meditation together. So so we will go more into this when we talk about the transcendent cure, and then how do we relate to this as a whole, to this systematic practice as a whole. But for now, I want to invite everybody to, I want to invite everybody to have, think of certain questions you may have in whatever I have just said over this past 1 hour plus. And maybe if you want to, you can also suggest certain things that you feel that I should address in the next part of the talk, or whether there are things that you didn't find very clear. Now, because this is a huge talk, right? And by the way, thank you for the support. You can use the chat group lah. Okay, just use the chat group in order to pose your questions. Just type them out. Or for some people for some people who know me through who know of this talk through the Facebook platform, you can also use the Facebook platform. Yeah. So I would like to invite you all to have questions. Okay, so the first question is, right, is there a one-to-one mapping between 2A, 2P, and 四季谈? Yes, there is. Okay, so as I said earlier, anesthetic, right, is the worldly teachings. It's only temporary and it's symptomatic. Now, why do I say that this is symptomatic? Because it's about making people happy. I would like to, I want to emphasize that the worldly teachings, right, are very one-sided in nature. Basically, right, you take that medicine, right, there is practically no effort on your part, right, on your body, right. There's practically no effort on your body to solve the problem. There's really no of it. You just eat and it numbs your body. It numbs your body. It's a passive process. Now, if you are talking about the particular teachings, right, I would compare this to being an analgesic, because there are certain pathways that this medicine, right, can do, right, in order to allow your body, right, to get rid of the pain on its own. So it's a bit longer lasting lah. It's not as as compared to the first one, right? It's not as symptomatic because it helps to relieve the pain through certain ways. It's not numbing. It's not like taking mint tablets. Yeah. As a panacea, right, is the counteractive teachings. It's a permanent cure. It's trying to lead you to finding out the root of this problem and solving it. And then the last one is the ultimate one, because now this one really needs some this one really needs some elaboration here. But what I can say is that because the Buddhist teaching is about curing the mind, right? It's not exactly curing the body, it's curing the mind, because the mind, right, creates this illusion of suffering. The mind actually, through its ignorance, right, makes us think that this suffering is real, that makes us think that this pain is real. And so actually, right, the ultimate teachings is a state, right, where we realize that, right, that what we have gone through so far, right, was not something that could be even concretized in the real sense. It's not real at all. This suffering is not real. It's just that we think that it's real. We think that we are ill, but we are not actually ill. And so of course this will be mapped onto the placebo, to the so-called the notion of medicine being a placebo, that it is not real. You see, that the illness that we have is actually something that is created by our own mind. Yeah, so I hope that answers your questions. Yeah. Is there anybody else? I'm actually very, very glad to this this session, because I hope that some of you, right, I see that there are a lot of new people here for this, who are coming from this talk. And so I have decided to, you know, last minute, right, I have decided to alter the content somewhat. And it's also thanks to your being early. Now, the reason why I want to alter this talk somewhat is because, right, I feel that it's important for everybody, right, to be on the same page, so that if you do not understand anything about Buddhism in before, right, perhaps you would have gotten out of this talk, right, certain take-home points that Buddhism wants to give to you, and that is basically, right, you know, it is in times of danger that a lot of us seek, that, you know, a lot of us seek a solution, and sometimes this solution, right, is not something that we can find in this world, but it's something that Buddhism can offer to you. Now, it may not be to you, right, to the individual person, right, it may not be the best. You may think that it's not the best solution, but I urge you, right, as you know, as a practitioner and as a monastic, right, I urge you to go and look deeply into the reality of the world as it is today. When we see a lot of suffering inside ourselves, right, when we see a lot of suffering around us, right, how can we use this, right, to examine, how can we use this to examine the Buddhist teachings, right, as a way that, as something that we can take refuge in something that we can really uphold and accept as a teaching that we want to follow for the rest of our lives. Yeah. And I also want to take this opportunity to address the practitioners in this assembly today, that a lot of times, right, these kind of events, right, that shake up our lives, right, are the things that let us know whether we are really practitioners or not, or are we just floating along with Buddhist teachings. Because a lot of people think that, you know, I practice for 20 years, I practice for 10 years, I should be considered a Buddhist. I took the 3 refuges, right? I recite, you know, the scriptures every day. Then why am I feeling that I have not progressed in Buddhism? Or why do I feel that my afflictions have actually increased? You know, I'm feeling more, you know, every time, right, when something happens, right, I sink into this negative emotion over and over again. Then that's where my job, right, my job is to remind you all that that practice, right, is about transforming the mind at a visceral level. So for example, today, if I can see you and you scold me, right, and I feel that, oh, there must be a reason why he scold me, instead of saying, oh, this person scold me again, you know, how come you always like that, blah, 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 and then the list goes on. Something as simple as that, right, will actually tell you what are the loopholes in your practice, whether you have been taking the Buddha's teachings to heart. And so, right, you look at this number 3 and 4 here, which I will highlight in red again. That this is what makes Buddhism different from any other teaching in the world, because it does not conform to your norms. It does not conform to the personal norm of anybody. The Buddha did not invent this truth. He realized this truth. It's just that he came up with different methods of teaching, right, to lead you all to this truth. And you need to take this seriously in order to find peace. Now what's the opposite of peace? Does anybody know what's the opposite of peace? The opposite of peace is war, right? But what kind of war are we fighting? It's not just a war against disease, It's a war against ourselves. Whether we have the composure, whether we have the emotional and mental, right, the intellectual stability, right, to bring us through whatever we may face in our lives. This is the real medicine. Not say that I'm in Taiwan now, and the pandemic has not really touched Taiwan, so everything is fine. That is 大错特错, that is something a particularly bad mistake to make, isn't it? Right? So if you think that, today, right, if you think that you are safe, right, then you must ask yourself, why do I feel safe? Will I always feel safe? Will I always think that, everything will be laid out for me very nice and in life, and everything will eventually be fine or whatever? Not necessarily lah. I would just say not necessarily. Maybe, but not. And it is this kind of uncertainty that we have to deal with. That's how we see the peace, Not say, don't try to bluff yourself. This one is something that is my honest and most sincere teaching today for this Chinese New Year. Because this New Year, right, is not going to be people think that it's going to be a very happy New Year and things like that. Yes, it's going to be happy, but it's also tempered. It's also restrained, right, by the somber. There's a very solemn part to this so-called Happy New Year. Is this hope? Is this hope? But it's a very tentative hope. Nobody knows for sure whether things will be okay or not. But here I am, right, as a Buddhist monk, telling you that there is hope, but you have to be very proactive in seeking that hope, and not be lulled into this sense of false security that we constantly do, with our lives. It sounds very simple, It sounds very simple, but it's not as simple, because tomorrow when you wake up, whether you remember the contents of this talk or not, right? Whether you remember the content of this talk or not will be very dependent on whether you understood the truth behind the kind of teachings that I gave today. And by all means, right, the teachings that I gave today, right, are really not very perfect. They have flaws, you see, but nevertheless, right, they are attempt to get to your heart, is to get to the core psyche of what you think is Buddhism and what really do you need as Buddhism. Yeah. And so because there are no more questions, and there are really no questions, right? I just want to hope that y'all can come for next week's talk, because there will be some very concrete things of what you can do there'll be some very, very concrete things on what you can do in order to try and, you know, seek this peace for yourselves. And of course, right, if you all have any problems, right, or any things that in the course of thinking about the content of today's teaching, right, if you have anything, any queries that you may have next week, right, please feel free to, you know, raise them up, because because I believe that every question is important to your practice. So and it will be very beneficial to everybody's progress as well. Okay, so thank you very much. Terence, would you like to conclude?
Yes. Thank you, Venerable. Thank you, Venerable, for the talk tonight. And we will be back for the second installment of the Dharma talk next Sunday, 31st of January, 2021. Same time, it will begin at 7:30 p.m. Thank you, everyone, for attending the first session tonight. So I will see you next Sunday. Good night.
Okay. Okay. Now, for those who are still around, right? If you want to join me for this dedication of merits, right? Is where we, you know, because of this Dharma talk, right? Or speaking of propagating the Dharma, speaking in Dharma, thinking about Dharma, and you know, learning the Dharma, right? Alongside everyone here in this session tonight. We have generated a lot of positive energy. Now, this positive energy can be something that will allow us, right, to be able to help more people in the future. And that's why we say that, you know, we want to dedicate these merits to our parents. We want to dedicate these merits to our loved ones, our friends, everyone else in this world, you know, who is living through this difficult time now. And we hope that they will be able to attain enlightenment, you know, just be like the Buddha. So if you would like, you can join me. I will just recite the words and you can repeat after me. Okay? May the merits thus accumulated be dedicated to all sentient beings. May all sentient beings and I together attain Buddhahood. Okay, thank you very much for this session today. We hope to see you all next week. Okay, thank you.